Have you ever wondered what would happen if fate intervened in the most unexpected way? If you're enjoying this story of chance encounters and life-changing moments, please hit that like button and subscribe to see more captivating stories that explore the unpredictable nature of love and connection. The kiss lasted exactly 3 seconds. 3 seconds that changed everything for both of them. Amelia Winters, CEO of Horizon Innovations, had never done anything so impulsive in her meticulously planned life. Yet there she stood in the middle of Grand Central Station, her lips still tingling, staring into the bewildered eyes of a complete stranger whose coffee now stained the marble floor between them. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, though she wasn't entirely sure what she was apologizing for, bumping into him, spilling his coffee, or the kiss that had followed in a moment of complete madness. The man before her, tall with kind eyes that crinkled at the corners, seemed equally stunned. "That's not the typical New York greeting I'm accustomed to," he finally managed, a hint of amusement breaking through his shock. Amelia's heart hammered against her ribs. At 38, she had built an empire from nothing, commanded boardrooms of intimidating men, closed billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, yet here she was, speechless and flushed like a teenager. Something about this man's face had triggered a response so visceral, so immediate, that her body had acted before her brain could intervene. "I'm Amelia," she said, extending her hand professionally as though they hadn't just shared the most bizarre introduction possible. "And I'd like to buy you another coffee." "Daniel," he replied, taking her hand. The simple touch sent electricity through her fingertips. "And I think after that greeting, coffee is the least we could do." Neither could have predicted that this strange encounter would spiral into something that would challenge everything they thought they knew about love, timing, and second chances. Amelia had never believed in love at first sight. Love was a luxury she hadn't afforded herself in the decade since founding Horizon. Her company specialized in sustainable technology solutions, and she had poured every ounce of passion into growing it from a startup in her garage to the industry leader it had become. Her days were scheduled down to 15-minute increments. Her relationships were carefully managed, primarily professional with occasional brief romantic entanglements that never threatened her independence or focus. Yet something had broken inside her that morning. Perhaps it was the phone call she'd received just before rushing through the station, her doctor confirming that at her age, having children would be increasingly difficult with each passing year. Perhaps it was seeing her younger sister's pregnancy announcement on social media the night before. Or perhaps it was simply that Daniel, with his worn messenger bag and thoughtful eyes, represented everything her life lacked: spontaneity, warmth, normalcy. As they sat across from each other in a quiet corner of the station cafe, Amelia studied him. Daniel Foster was 35, a high school English teacher with a passion for literature that animated his entire being when he spoke. He had been married once, briefly, to his college sweetheart before they realized they wanted different futures. No children. A small apartment in Brooklyn with too many books. A life as different from hers as possible. "So," he said, stirring his replacement coffee, "do you make a habit of kissing strangers in train stations, or should I feel special?" Amelia laughed, surprising herself. "You're the first. And probably the last. I don't know what came over me. Well, as far as Monday mornings go, this one's certainly memorable." His smile was genuine, lacking the calculation she was accustomed to seeing in the business world. "Though I should warn you, claiming random men as lovers might lead to complications." "Claiming you?" Amelia raised an eyebrow, her confidence returning. "That's presumptuous. You kissed me in front of approximately 300 commuters, then introduced yourself. In romance novel terms, I believe that's a claim." His eyes twinkled with mischief. Something about his easy manner disarmed her completely. Before she knew it, Amelia had missed her first meeting of the day, then her second. For 3 hours, they talked as though they'd known each other for years. She learned about his students, his passion for teaching classic literature to teenagers who initially couldn't care less. He listened intently as she described the challenges of being a woman in the tech industry, the loneliness at the top, the constant pressure to prove herself. When they finally parted ways, exchanging numbers felt like the most natural thing in the world. What wasn't natural was the way Amelia couldn't focus for the remainder of the day, checking her phone every few minutes, wondering if he would text. Wondering if she should text first. Wondering when she had reverted to adolescent behavior patterns. Her assistant, Morgan, noticed immediately. Either you're coming down with something, or you met someone. Your face is doing that thing it never does. What thing? Amelia asked, attempting to regain her composure. Smiling. For no reason. Repeatedly. Morgan leaned against the doorframe of Amelia's expansive office. So which is it? Fever or feelings? Amelia sighed, swiveling in her chair to face the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. I kissed a stranger today. Morgan's professional demeanor cracked as she nearly choked. I'm sorry, you what? I kissed a man I bumped into at Grand Central. Then we had coffee for 3 hours. Who are you and what have you done with my boss? Morgan approached cautiously, as though Amelia might be contagious. The woman who once told me relationships were inefficient allocations of emotional resources? Amelia groaned, covering her face. I don't know what happened. One minute I was rushing to make my train, the next minute. She trailed off, remembering the inexplicable pull she'd felt toward Daniel, like gravity shifting. Well, Morgan said after a moment, is he at least worth the temporary insanity? Before Amelia could answer, her phone buzzed with a text message. Daniel, *, is it too soon to ask the woman who kissed me without warning if she'd like to have dinner tonight? Asking for a friend who can't stop thinking about her, *. Amelia felt a smile spread across her face again. Yes, she said to Morgan. I think he might be. What began that evening over dinner at a small Italian restaurant in the village was something neither of them had anticipated. Daniel was everything Amelia wasn't: patient, present, content with his modest but meaningful life. He challenged her workaholic tendencies, questioned her assumptions about success, and made her laugh more in one evening than she had in months. For Daniel, Amelia was a force of nature, brilliant, driven, occasionally intimidating, but with a vulnerability beneath her polished exterior that few were privileged to see. He found himself drawn to her complexity, the way she analyzed everything, the fierce protectiveness she showed toward her company and the people who worked for her. By their third date, the initial strangeness of their meeting had become their private joke. By their fifth, Amelia had begun to rearrange meetings to make time for him, something she'd never done for anyone. By their eighth, they had fallen into a rhythm that felt both exciting and comfortable, as though they'd known each other in another life. But reality has a way of intruding on even the most promising beginnings. 6 weeks into their relationship, as they lay tangled in the sheets of Amelia's penthouse bedroom, her phone rang with the distinctive tone she used for board members. Daniel watched as she transformed before his eyes, her soft expression hardening into the CEO mask he was beginning to recognize. Winters, she answered crisply. The one-sided conversation that followed was brief but clearly significant. When she hung up, she was already reaching for her clothes. I have to go in, she said, not meeting his eyes. There's a situation with our Singapore expansion. Daniel nodded, trying to hide his disappointment. It was the third time that week that work had interrupted their time together. Of course. Do what you need to do. Amelia paused in the middle of buttoning her blouse. You're upset. I'm not upset, he said carefully. I understand your work is important. But, she prompted, knowing him well enough already to sense the unspoken. Daniel sat up, running a hand through his disheveled hair. But I'm starting to wonder where I fit in your life, Amelia. Between your emergency meetings and international calls and the constant emails. That's not fair, she said, her defenses rising. You knew who I was when we met. What I do. The responsibilities I have. I did, he acknowledged. And I admire what you've built. But there has to be room for more than just work in a life. There is, she insisted, gesturing between them. This is me making room. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Is it? Because sometimes it feels like I'm just another appointment in your calendar, slotted in between conference calls and strategy sessions. The words stung because there was truth in them. Amelia had compartmentalized Daniel as she did everything else, a relationship to be managed efficiently alongside her other commitments. But the feelings he stirred in her refused to be contained so neatly. That's not how I see you, she said softly. Then how do you see me, Amelia? What am I to you? His question hung in the air between them. The answer caught in her throat. What was he to her? The man she'd impulsively kissed in a moment of existential crisis? A pleasant diversion from the pressures of her position? Or something more significant, something that frightened her with its potential to disrupt the careful order of her life? I don't know, she admitted finally. This is all new territory for me. Daniel nodded slowly, absorbing her honesty. For me too. But I need to know if we're heading somewhere, or if this is just a temporary detour for you. Amelia felt panic rising in her chest, the same panic she felt whenever she couldn't immediately solve a problem or control a situation. I can't give you guarantees, Daniel. My life doesn't work that way. I'm not asking for guarantees, he said, his voice gentle but firm. I'm asking if you're willing to try. Really try. Not just when it's convenient or when you have a gap in your schedule. The request seemed simple, reasonable even. Yet to Amelia, it represented a fundamental shift in how she'd structured her existence. Prioritizing someone else's needs alongside her own. Creating space that wasn't dictated by productivity or strategic advantage. I have to go, she said, finishing dressing. We'll talk about this later. But later never seemed to come. In the weeks that followed, Amelia threw herself into work with renewed intensity, using the Singapore expansion as justification for longer hours and less availability. Daniel, true to his patient nature, gave her space while making it clear he wasn't going anywhere, yet. The breaking point came on a rainy Tuesday evening when Amelia, exhausted from back-to-back meetings, arrived at Daniel's apartment unannounced. He opened the door to find her drenched and uncharacteristically disheveled. Amelia? What's wrong? He asked, immediately concerned. She stepped inside, water dripping onto his worn welcome mat. My mother called today. Daniel waited, knowing there was more. Amelia rarely spoke of her family, but he knew enough to understand her relationship with her mother was complicated at best. She asked if I was seeing anyone serious, Amelia continued, pacing his small living room. When I mentioned you, she said she was relieved I'd finally come to my senses and found someone before it was too late. The bitterness in her voice was palpable. Too late for what? Daniel asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. Children. Marriage. The traditional path she's always wanted for me. Amelia stopped pacing, turning to face him with unexpected vulnerability in her eyes. And it made me wonder if that's what you want too. If that's what you're waiting for me to want. Daniel approached her carefully, as one might a wounded animal. What I want is for you to be happy, Amelia. Whether that includes marriage or children or neither, that's something only you can decide. But what do you want? She pressed, needing to hear it. He took a deep breath. Honestly? Yes, someday I'd like a family. I've always seen myself as a father. But that doesn't mean. See, she interrupted, the vulnerability replaced by defensive anger. This is exactly why relationships don't work for me. Eventually, everyone wants me to become someone else. To want different things. That's not what I said, Daniel countered, frustration creeping into his voice. I was answering your question honestly. That doesn't mean I expect you to change your life plans for me. Doesn't it, though? Amelia challenged. Because eventually, this fundamental difference between us will matter. You'll resent me for not wanting what you want, or I'll resent you for making me feel like I should. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, exasperated. You're getting ahead of yourself. We've been dating for less than 3 months. I'm not asking you to bear my children tomorrow. But you are asking me to consider a future where that might be expected, she shot back. A future where my company isn't my only priority. Is that so unreasonable? Daniel asked quietly. To hope that the woman I'm falling in love with might someday see me as more than just a pleasant distraction from work? The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Falling in love. He hadn't said it directly before, though Amelia had sensed the depth of his feelings growing. Now, confronted with them explicitly, she felt the walls closing in. I should go, she said, already backing toward the door. Amelia, wait. No, I need to think. This is exactly what I was afraid would happen. She reached for the doorknob. I'm not built for this, Daniel. I never have been. As she stepped back into the rain, Daniel called after her, You kissed me first, remember? You claimed me. Not the other way around. The words followed her all the way home, echoing in her mind as she tried to lose herself in work that night. She had initiated this disruption, this complication, this potential heartbreak. In a moment of weakness or clarity, she still wasn't sure which, she had acted on an impulse that had set all of this in motion. For 3 days, Amelia buried herself in her company, sleeping on the couch in her office and avoiding Daniel's calls and texts. Morgan watched with increasing concern as her boss drove herself to exhaustion, snapping at board members and making uncharacteristic mistakes in presentations. On the 4th day, Morgan finally intervened, closing Amelia's office door firmly behind her. This has to stop, she said without preamble. Amelia looked up from her laptop, dark circles under her eyes. Excuse me? You're a mess. The entire office is walking on eggshells. You just called our biggest investor by the wrong name twice in the same call. Morgan crossed her arms. Whatever happened with Teacher Man, you need to fix it or move on, because this zombie CEO routine isn't working for anyone. I don't know what you're talking about, Amelia said stiffly. Morgan sighed, her expression softening. Amelia, I've worked with you for 7 years. I've seen you handle hostile takeover attempts, sexist investors, and that nightmare product recall without breaking a sweat. But this guy has you completely undone. That has to mean something. Amelia stared at her computer screen, unseeing. It means I made a mistake getting involved with someone who wants things I can't give. What things? Morgan pressed. A normal relationship. Eventually, a family. Someone who puts him first. The admission felt like defeat. Morgan pulled up a chair, sitting directly in Amelia's line of sight. Has he actually said he expects you to give up your company or your ambitions? Not in those words, no. Then maybe you're projecting your own fears onto him, Morgan suggested gently. Maybe you're so convinced that success and love are mutually exclusive that you're not even giving this a fair chance. The observation hit uncomfortably close to home. Amelia had grown up watching her mother sacrifice her own dreams for marriage and children, becoming increasingly bitter about the choices she'd made. From an early age, Amelia had vowed never to follow that path, to never depend on anyone else for her fulfillment or security. It's not that simple, Amelia said, though her certainty was wavering. It never is, Morgan agreed. But you know what else isn't simple? Building a sustainable tech company from scratch. Revolutionizing an industry. Leading hundreds of employees through global expansion. She leaned forward. You've done impossible things before, Amelia. Why is this any different? The question lingered as Morgan left her alone with her thoughts. Why was this so much more frightening than any professional challenge she'd faced? The answer came to her slowly, because failure in business, while painful, had never threatened her sense of self the way this relationship did. If she fully committed to Daniel and it didn't work out, she would lose more than